For years, outdoor brands have shouted to the skies, each claiming their gear is better, tougher, and smarter than the next. They bragged about seams and fabrics, about features you didn't need. And when the world started caring about the planet, those same brands tried to have it both ways, making the same old stuff, but slapping on a green label to soothe the conscience. But LIVSN isn't like the rest. LIVSN was born to help you strip it all down, to live with intention. Own less, live more. It's a simple creed, but simplicity is what matters most. We've been timeless since before we even had a name. LIVSN grew out of a deep hunger for freedom, a love for this earth and the people who walk it. We don't obsess over the gear. We focus on the life the gear lets you live. Retailers, think on this. How many brands do you carry that are cut from the same old cloth, filling racks with sameness? Couldn't your floor use something different? A brand that doesn't just sell clothes, but sells a way of being? LIVSN gear is built to last, to be repaired, to stick with your customers for a lifetime of trails, peaks, and adventures. In the Ozarks, we have an honest, gritty sensibility with a sharp edge of style. It's what happens when the love of the land meets a modern streak. And if you're wondering, LIVSN's founder, Andrew Gibbs Dabney, can explain it better than anyone. Look, here's the straight talk. We believe in LIVSN enough to put our name on it. Send in your Fall 25 preseason orders by January 15th. Mention this podcast, and you'll get the Rock Fight preseason special, a clean 2% off, stacked on top of LIVSN's own preseason program discounts. Don't wait. Stock the brand that's burning hot in the outdoor world, the brand that's here for the long haul. Be a rock fighter, not just another retailer. LIVSN. Own less, live more. Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin, and today we have a founder's story unlike many you've heard before. Today, I'm talking with Andrew Gibbs Dabney of LIVSN. But before we get to that, hey, have you subscribed to Rock Fight's weekly newsletter? If you haven't, you're missing out. This past week was amazing. We had original Justin Hausman content. You had original content from me. We had some funny stuff in there. It was great. So what you need to do is go to rockfight.co and click join the mailing list so you don't miss the next one, which comes out next Tuesday. Yeah, Christmas Eve. That's the next newsletter. Sign up today. Lastly, if you're new around here, we'd love it if you subscribed and joined the Rock Fight by lobbing a stone at the follow button on whatever podcast app you are listening to us on, and also give us that 5-star rating. All right, guys, let's start the show. Unless you skipped ahead, and if you did, how dare you? You just heard me read an ad for outdoor apparel brand LIVSN. And today's guest on the show is Andrew Gibbs Dabney, the founder of LIVSN. And the reason Andrew is here isn't because he bought some ad spots on the Rock Fight. Look, I'm not that easy. No, there are two reasons why Andrew is here. And the first is the origin story of LIVSN. Now, I can't stand when podcasts have on a guest for no reason other than just having on a guest. I don't want to hear about your youth and what led you to get to this place. Look, I want to hear a point of view when I listen to a podcast and why your guest either supports or disagrees that point of view. But when I heard LIVSN's origin story, which is tied to Andrew's life, I heard a true outdoor origin story, and one that matches where the outdoor industry is heading. And the second reason Andrew is here is because of where we are in LIVSN's life cycle. It allows him to offer an informed opinion on what an outdoor brand should be here in the outdoor industry as we head into 2025. So that's the first part of today's show. But then I also invite you to stick around after that conversation because today, guys, December 20th, it's the 2-year anniversary of the Rock Fight. And I realized today that the very first episode of the show would make for an excellent parting shot. So I hope that you will stay to enjoy a retelling of the debut of the Rock Fight. But we're not there yet. Welcome back to the Rock Fight, where today it's the modern outdoor origin story with Andrew Gibbs Dabney. All right, well, we are joined now by the founder and CEO of LIVSN Designs, Andrew Gibbs Dabney. Andrew, I got to tell you, I always want to switch the D and a G. I don't know if you've heard that before. Like, whenever I'm sending you an email, I want to write Andrew Gibbs Dabney. I don't know why. But anyway, welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks for having me on. It's better than like Gibbs Dobner, Gobbs Dobney, which I get from time to time. So, yeah, it's understandable. Growing up with a hyphenated last name has its own challenges, like finding my name in any sort of database. It's hard. Like with the government, they're like, let me look under Dabney. I'm like, you can. You might find it.
It isn't going to work.
Let me look under Gibbs. Like, I can't find him. Like, yeah, it's because it's Gibbs Dabney. But, you learn to get around it. I spell it out a lot.
Well, thanks for coming on the show, man. This is kind of an odd rock fight, right? Because, the kind of one of the points of differentiation for the show is we tend to ignore origin stories. I mean, nothing kind of annoys me more on other podcasts than hearing from a guest why the outdoors means so much to them and then having to sit through like 15 minutes of like their story, to figure out why they got to. But when you and I first spoke and you told me your story, and how it directly played into not only why LIVSN exists, but why LIVSN is what it is. I'm like, okay, well, this is a great story. We got to share this with our listeners. So it's obviously incredibly moving, but it's also an outdoor brand origin story, the likes of which, I don't think I've heard, but really fits into that mold. So let's just kick it off, man. Like, would you mind sharing with us, how LIVSN came to be?
Sure. And yeah, I remember that first conversation where I don't even think I saw you on video, but I could like feel your eyes glazing over for a while until I started telling you the story, and all of a sudden you perked up. So
it's like, what does this guy want to talk about? Jeez.
But sure. I mean, it's somewhat, I'll make it as short as I can because it starts where I was born. And so I was born with a medical condition where my feet were actually inverted. It was pigeon-toed, but to the point where they were face backwards. And I was born down in Louisiana. And at the time, that meant that you had to have multiple surgeries. So between the ages of 2 weeks old and 12 years old, I had 8 surgeries on both my feet. 7 on my right, 8 on my left, rather, just for accuracy. But what that meant was I was always, in hip casts. I was in the hospital. I was told that I wasn't going to be able to run fast, or probably wouldn't be able to do sports, or all these things that have limited mobility. And I didn't think about any of that as a kid. When I got those casts off, and even before I got them off, I was outside. I was running around. I was riding my bike. I was climbing rocks. We lived by a park. We moved to Arkansas when I was really young. I lived by a park called Wilson Park in Fayetteville, and I was just down there. I was that kid that the parent, my dad, would come out and go to the top of the hill and just go, Andrew, and I'd come home for dinner and go back outside. And really, I think a lot of what comes next was built on that experience, just not letting things get in my way. And like I said, it wasn't some like persevering philosophy I had. It was just being a kid. And this is relevant because whenever I went to college, I started experimenting with drugs. More than your typical ones that grow on the ground. So I was experimenting with pharmaceuticals and things like that. And I ended up finding OxyContin and opiates in general. And I believe that, because of my past as a kid, being on morphine and all those surgeries, it just felt right. So my first experience with that was the classic warm blanket. Everything was comfortable. Everything felt good. And I very quickly went from recreational to addiction with that. And over the course of the next few years, my life really spiraled downhill. I went just to daily use with a habit that was very expensive and dangerous, and ended up getting in a place where I somehow robbed a liquor store in my hometown. Now it was nonviolent. It was amateur. It was, a first offense, and all of these things that ended up playing in my favor, but I still did the thing. And so I ended up going to rehab in between the act and the court date, and getting sober. And while I was getting sober, I was looking at 40 years to life in prison. And that's what I was trying to square my head around, right? Is 40 years as a minimum. And in reality, that means 8 to 10 on good behavior in state prison, right? And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to spend, a decade of my life locked up, how do I maximize that time? How do I learn something? How do I get out in my not much younger than I am now, in my early 30s, and do something with my life and not have made that 10 years wasted? And that sort of mental space is where I started realizing that the way I was living my life was not really in line with the values that I believed in. And I believed in doing things. I believed in being outside, not letting things get in your way. Having experiences, and I had got caught up in a more hedonistic consumerist lifestyle that I think a lot of people do, with or without drugs, where I was just acquiring things. I was just having kind of vapid experiences, and really in this mindset of not really building anything productive. And so I spent about a year between rehab, jail. I did go to prison. Was able to get out early through a military style boot camp program, which also gave me a lot of time to think, because it was all of the sitting around board, but none of the combat training of boot camp. So just the BS without the useful skills. And when I got out, I really, all these thoughts really congealed into this idea that I wanted to build something. I wanted to do something of meaning for the world that wasn't just purely selfish. And I wanted to go out and have experiences. Because when everything's taken away from you and you're handed a towel roll with a toothpaste inside and a toothbrush, that's all the belongings in the world to your name. Yeah. You realize that everything can be taken away from you, but nothing you've ever done or thought can. My dad actually told me something on the way, and he goes, I forget exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, they can lock you up, but they can't ever lock your mind up. I didn't know what to do with this at the time. I went back to school. I ended up, got back into college. I was readmitted into the University of Arkansas, and I was going to be an outdoor recreation and sports management major. My goal was actually to go to like Keystone or Breck or somewhere and like manage the mountain. I wanted to be mountain ops manager. I found that job and saw that it was well paying, and I got to just kind of be in ski and mountain bike and live that lifestyle. And that was my goal. Ended up working for another outdoor apparel company, Lifestyle More, called Fayetteville, out of Fayetteville. Some of my buddies from college had started this brand, and I did everything for the most part throughout the course of 5 years. I was ops, warehouse, e-com, retail, HR, ended up being the COO and then the CEO. And so I saw a lot of the moving parts of building a brand, learned a lot of what to do, learned a lot of what not to do, really formed the kind of ideas that I didn't really know what I was going to do with. But whenever I moved my next chapter, it was, how do I take some of these learnings and apply it in the way that I would do it? How do I take this philosophy of life that came from my time being locked up and those realizations in my love for the outdoors, plus a little bit of knowledge, that perfect little, I always talk about this. There's a pinnacle of knowledge and ignorance where you start a company, where you feel just enough knowledge where I can do this, but you don't know enough to say this is not a good idea. And that's when companies get started. And I was right there. Yeah. And so I started writing down the concept, right? These ideas of sustainability, what that really means, what it means to build a product that deserves to exist, what it means to be a good company in your community, how it means to be, sustainable with the capital S, right? And like, and how that's really not attainable. Like sustainable is not attainable, right? Like it's a goal. It's not a state of being. And then I found the name, right? This idea, this word, lives nutare, which means one who lives life fully. And that's what really crystallized it, right? Because that became the logical starting point, or really end point, rather. Like that's our customer. I'm building
what
for
language
people.
Is that from?
Swedish.
Okay.
Building for people that want to experience life and not necessarily just acquire things. But to do that, to spend your life outside, to have a minimal amount of belongings, you really need high quality things that are very versatile, that are built intentionally and last a long time. And so that became the blueprint for the idea, the design principles, the values, the mission that we still are really true to today.
What gets me excited about this is because I talk so much about, my time working in the industry, and producer Dave's here too, folks, and I'm sure he'll chime in on a lot of these things too. And it's, there is such the history is founded on innovation and new ideas and creating things in order to enable outdoor activities. And, if you've listened to the show for a long enough time, you've heard me probably, go on and on about how people are still trying to do it the way we did in like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And all those problems are basically solved. And, it's kind of like, oh, is there innovation left? It's like, yeah, there is. It's just, you have to look at things differently. And so to hear your story, and that's why I say it is an outdoor, it's such a good, like just true outdoor origin story, because you're identifying true needs and approaching just a different set of problems from what, the founders in the 60s and 70s and 80s did. Right. And, I don't want to sit here and, on a show that usually we're looking to pick fights with people and say, like, it just blows smoke up your ass. But I kind of look at it and say, like, but a brand like what you're creating is sort of, when I look ahead at what the industry can become or hopefully will become, this is the kind of stuff that we need, right? These are the kind of innovation stories that are going to set the bar for the next generation of brands and hopefully the industry. It's one thing just to say, hey, we do things sustainably and look at our hang tag that says that we do. And it's like, you're saying, no, we're going to actually live that in how this brand is founded.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, and you're feel free to throw a rock or two.
We'll get there. We'll figure something out more.
I was going to say, if there's one thing that going to prison and going to boot camp and all that teaches you, is kind of how to be a little bit resilient or knock a blow off. But I mean, someone famous on the way said something that stuck with me, right? And it's never too late for great. Right. And if your goal is to build something great and build something meaningful, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it doesn't matter how crowded it is and how many incumbents are, it's not too late. Now, I do have a bone to pick with brands that just go to the factory floor, showroom and say, here's the 20 products that I want, a shell and a fleece and a base, and here, throw my logo on it. I don't think those should exist. right? Because there's nothing inherently unique about that. But the bar is not much higher than that, right? The bar is you're trying to do something a little different. You either have a customer that's different, an aesthetic that's different, a use case that's different, or something that you're going to put on there that you're going to really stand behind, and you want to make it great, right? If it's great, then there's room for it. And that's still what I believe, whether it be our brand and whether we make it or not is kind of irrelevant. Like there's always room for people that have a good idea and want to build something of quality. And I think I would have loved to go to Europe and get a rugby jersey and bring it back to the United States and say, this is innovative, right? Hell yeah. Like to make this in the 70s would have been amazing. That's not what we're doing anymore, right? Every product category has been made. And so we're really more interested in refinement and versatility, and how do we take what's old, blend it with what's new in a way that hasn't been done before to make something special and make it great, ideally. And I won't say that everything we make is great yet, but that's our goal.
Okay, so what is great? And what is for LIVSN, what is great?
For us, we try to focus on refinement of details that you don't know to look for, but you learn to love over time. Right? So those are things like, is your pocket deep enough? Is it the right shape? Are they in the right spots? We use seam construction that's not convenient to be built, but are stronger because we do it. So like flat felled inseams aren't the most convenient thing to make in mass production, but they come out with a nice hand and a nice function, and they're strong, and they also just look good from the inside, right? And these things over time, you don't really know necessarily which product is going to become one you love. Mm-hmm. But we really try to hit this ideal called emotional durability, right? Because there's physical durability of a product. And this is a huge tie back to sustainability and what it really means. You can make a very durable product. You can take that to the extreme. But if it doesn't become special to you, if there's nothing special about it that makes it something that you love, then it's not going to be kept. It's going to get thrown away. It's going to be donated, which, by the way, means thrown away. And it's going to go away because there's nothing special about it. And so we try to look at this from a very user-centric point of view, to where like the zippers work well, the buttons are in the right spot, the refinement is there, it's got some heft to it. You can tell that it's high quality. And then the other thing is, from a feature set, you mentioned this, like we're not feature light. We kind of have a lot of things. We have a lot of pockets, but we try to put the features that people actually use without the gimmicks that are just there for marketing, so that you have the versatility to use these things for hiking or biking or going to work and all these things, but you don't have all this stuff detracting from the day-to-day use. We don't put everything in orange or lime green, it's kind of tonal, right? And there'd be a little bit of marketing and branding advantage to that, like i.e. Cotopaxi, right? It's very noticeable. But are you going to wear that for decades? Maybe that one shell, but not your entire wardrobe of color blocked bright prints. And I don't mean to throw shade at Cotopaxi. I think I have some of their stuff. It's just, I think that somewhat detracts from the versatility and long-term use of certain products.
No, I'll throw a rock at Cotopaxi because I've done it before in the show. I mean, that's kind of the thing. And I think they stand for something. Like what they're doing is different in a way. But when it comes to the product, yeah, they're a vibe, right? I mean, it's like when that color blocking puffy isn't popular anymore, it's like, well, what do you have next? Because if I want to get a black one, like I got a million other choices. So, but yeah, I think that kind of the fact that you're relying on durability and versatility, again, huge like words in authentic outdoor brands, right? Those are two things that are super important, and to kind of create color palettes that are going to last longer is kind of goes in line with durability and versatility.
Well, and that's where I get to is like sustainability starts at the design process, right? Like it starts with the color palette you choose. It starts with the materials you choose. And then it goes all the way to end of life. And that's where you make decisions about, is it recycled? Is it organic? Do you use plastic packaging? Which the answer to that is yes, yes, and no, right? You do all these things that used to be the capital S sustainability. Like we're sustainable because we use recycled polyester.
Right.
Well, it doesn't necessarily matter if that's a fast fashion piece that goes out of style in 6 months. You can make it out of, hand spun organic cotton by bespoke farmers. But if it's like this super big, parachute shirt in bright pink and yellow, then it doesn't really matter. And so it's like those things are ingredients to a better, less impact product. But it really goes from the design all the way to how you care for it after it fails, because clothing fails, right? Like we don't say that we're the most durable product. Like I said, you can buy that. You can buy like a double layer 14-ounce denim pant, right? It's probably going to last longer, but that brand, are they going to repair it for you? How was it made? Like, did it hit all these other boxes? And like checking boxes is one thing. That's not the answer to it, but it is like, it's important that you look at it from cradle to grave.
So you are launching, or you have launched your brand into the crowded outdoor marketplace, right? And we'll get to that bit in a second, but I'm curious how you blend sort of the ethos of the brand with then the traditional way that outdoor apparel brands have succeeded, like with the roadmap to kind of commercial success, right? So the brand did start on Kickstarter. So how has crowdfunding played into your growth, and then also kind of how does that kind of led to the current state of the brand?
Crowdfunding, it was always the plan to go to Kickstarter first, because having a little bit of experience, not a lot, at a small company, knowing that you can't go to a store with an idea. You can't go to a store, a retailer, and say, I've got this new brand that no one has heard of, and get any sort of credibility for that, right? And also, it's very hard to hit production scale with no money, right? So how do you solve for this, right? You go, okay, crowdfunding. And Kickstarter is a little bit, not quite as big as it was, but at the time there was a lot of hype around it. And so where can you go to get several hundred people all at once to buy something up front to go build production? And also, where do you go to find people that are that passionate and early adopters that are that willing to give you feedback? And one of our design principles is really to iterate, right? To get feedback and iterate on products over time, which is, I had spent a little bit of time in a tech company accelerator called Techstars early on, just wild kind of coincidence. But part of the funding that got us here. And I was about all these tech founders about, like, they could put a product out and then within 2 weeks have it be wildly different based on feedback. And like, okay, well, apparel, we can't do it that fast. But we should be iterating, especially as a small brand that doesn't know. And Kickstarter is a way to get people that are very willing to give you their opinion. And there's a difference between like sunsetting a product or like just a new season, a new SKU and iteration. And like, that's actually kind of a pull and tug with outdoor that's not talked about a lot, is that a lot of people don't like the product to change, because once they have it, they don't want to see a new one sometimes. And especially in a retail environment, if it's changed, then it's old, and it doesn't mean it's less than, and it's really not. And so there's a difference between iterative small designs and like a version thing that we're actually still working through. Like, we're on version 3 of our pants, and we had to do that because Pocket visibly changed. So an iteration went to a version because we wanted to make sure that the customer knew that it's not the same. And by the customer, I really meant the store. And it's just one of those things that we're figuring out as we grow, how to do that well.
You also, though, made some really interesting internal choices as well. Like, when we were first talking, you told me this, and I was like, I don't understand why everybody doesn't do this, because you have blended the role of head of product and head of sustainability. Can you talk about coming to that decision, and like, what has the payoff been?
Oh, it's been great. And I don't know if I told you this or not the first time, but it was really a requirement of this individual. So when Abby came on, she was working for us as a contractor doing some product design. And she had sworn off, she was about to quit, and had sworn off making anything else. Had said, I can't stomach building anything else. Like, it's not sustainable. And so I said, hey, would you want to come on and lead our product development? She said, well, I'll do it if it can be part of my title and part of my weekly duties, and part of my time to be head of sustainability too. And that's not going to be a lip service to it. Like, we're going to actually make change. And I said, okay, like, that was a no brainer to me. Like I said, it was part of the values.
It is a no brainer,
right? And we didn't want this thing that happens where the product development team and the sustainability team are at odds, right? But if you go into it from the beginning, like I said, with this design aspect, designing for sustainability, designing for lower impact, which is the better way to say that, right? Like, because there will be an impact no matter what.
Yep.
And inherently making something is not, like, it's more sustainable to not make anything. Right. And so this has been part of what we've built up over the course of time. And with her, we've finally refiled as a public benefit corporation. We're in the final stages of certification by B Lab to be a certified B Corp. And our mission there is to have a product and systems that have function greater than their impact. Right. It's not to have no impact. It's not possible.
It's not possible.
We accept that we're going to build something, but we want something to be built to be more valuable than the impact that it makes. And that's been her, like, right. We're trying to do that from design all the way to end of life. And that's what includes repair program, which I know we have a lot to say on that. Right. But like, stuff like that does help, because downstream effects of clothing is some of the biggest, right. It's the biggest chunk of impact. And so, like, you need to talk about it. And it's not just, to do it. It's real.
Yeah, and it's just, and anybody from a brand who's possibly listening to this, like, please take this to heart, because this was a thing that I noticed when I was during my time at Polar Tech, when I would go, to all of these apparel brands and see how the structure is arranged. And you'd have some brands where, man, there was great coexistence between sustainability and product, and they maybe butt heads from time to time, but you could see that it really mattered. Then there's other places where, the sustainability director was walking down the hall, like the product director's like hiding, like didn't want to hear it. I don't want to hear what that person that person's gonna put a squash on my plans. And then there's even other places, probably more than we'd like to admit, where it's a largely ceremonial title. Director of sustainability is a largely ceremonial title. It's like, oh yeah, no, we care. Like, yeah, not that much though, right? If it's going to get in our way of making the stuff that we want to make. So this needs to be the future, frankly, is the way I look at it. It's like, yeah, it just makes sense to blend these. And I love the fact that it wasn't even your idea. It was like a person who was a product director saying, no, and I have to have both roles if this is going to work. And, there's something in there for sure.
Right. And the reality is it does stop things in its tracks sometimes. We'll talk about something we want to make, right?
Yeah.
And then as it filters through, and this is the point of these design principles that we have, it's to give guardrails, it's to be a filter. So we say, hey, we want to make this. And then we go, okay, does it need to exist? Do we have a point of view on it? Can we make it, once again, lower impact? Can we, all these things. And if the answers are no, or if there's enough no's or one big no, then we don't make that product. And that happens a lot. And so there's a reason why product developers don't always like to hit their sustainability person.
Sure.
But the thing is, that's a good thing.
Yes.
Right. That is what we want. If it was just all rubber stamped and is it organic or is it recycled, then you're not really having an impact, or you're not really reducing your impact. Right. Well, your words.
Sorry, Marmot. We've been coming at you a lot lately. If there's one thing that unites every member of the outdoor and active community, it's that no matter what your favorite outdoor activity is, we all burn calories, we all need fuel. And that's where Fuel Goods comes in. Fuel Goods is the ultimate curator of nutrition for active people everywhere. Because no one knows more about how you should fuel your adventures, or how to get that fuel in your hands, than they do. And right now is prime time for fueling. Over the next month, we'll have turkey trots, Santa runs, frosty 5Ks, all along with the temptation to refuel using all of the desserts and holiday staples that will no doubt be in your home for the remainder of the year. Guys, we got to stop the madness. Fuel Goods has done the hard work of assembling a delicious and effective assortment of products to help you fuel your next adventure or event. And if you're overwhelmed, you can order up one of their pre-assorted boxes like the famous Rider Box, or the one that started it all, the Runner Box. And when you're done shopping for yourself, order a Fuel Goods monthly subscription as the perfect holiday gift for that calorie-deprived adventurer in your life. Look, I'm hungry. Aren't you hungry? Head to fuelgoods.com and start shopping today. We're talking about a lot of differentiators, what you're doing at LIVSN. And again, this is why I really wanted to have you on the show. Because recently on the Rock Fight, we've been talking about the difficulty of growing or introducing a new brand to the outdoor marketplace, given the breadth of existing brands and products. There are just so many brands that are all mostly doing the same thing that it's hard to stand apart, especially when some of those existing brands have the clout and financial resources that they do. So, you said 2020 was kind of like the official get up and go for LIVSN. Or, pushing 5 years into this, like, how have you kind of competed to grow to the point where you have grown to this point? Obviously, you're not where you want to be, I'm sure, ultimately, but to get to here where you are, how have you sort of navigated the larger outdoor market?
Look, I won't say it's been easy, right? We would be way bigger and farther along in 5 years than we are now if everything went exactly to plan, right? There's a reason why it's hard, and it is those incumbents that make great products. And as I said, like, you have to make something great, I believe, to stand out. And the thing is, you can stand out quicker by making something flashy, I think, right? You can make something incredibly new and bright or innovative. Now, whether or not it's actually a good product will mean whether you grow really fast and die, or if you grow slowly and sustain. And I'm much more interested in that second path, where we build something great that is actually versatile and people want to own for the rest of their life, but it takes a little longer to hit breakthrough because it's not so bright, it's not so innovative. And what we've really gone back to over and over and over again is try to make the best product and try to have a true connection with our customer. Right. And you mentioned like that, it used to be innovation that brought you in. A lot of what we bring to the DNA of the way we do things is like old school business mentality. It's like, when you call us, you're going to get us on the phone. It's really easy to outsource customer service as a small company. And I would say it's probably more financially appropriate. But it's never been something that I've been able to stomach, because if you call and get a call center or someone at our 3PL logistics that doesn't really know anything about the product, you're not going to have an experience that cultivates a repeat customer. You're not going to build a connection to your customer. You're not going to get that product feedback. And so we just keep hitting on building a good product, trying to be good to our customers, trying to be a good member of the community. And by community, that means both our local community, but also like the broader outdoor community, right? Like there's a part of playing this game that's, for lack of a better word, can you bleed longer than the other guy as a new brand, right? Because like a real brand that is meaningful, I think, takes time and repetition. It takes time and market. It takes familiarity. And you really can't do anything to get over that without hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, right? Or some way to pound it in people's minds. And I think that by coming and doing something well and keeping showing up and being good people, that's what'll be the thing that works. And that's really where we go back on.
Do you have any insight at who your primary customer is? Are they younger folks? Are they us, like, middle-aged white guys? Is it kind of standard outdoor fare? And I ask because, that's, if you look at where we need to be in terms of how we make stuff, there's a lot of consumer education that needs to happen. And I've always kind of defaulted, like, until it's regulated, it's really going to take a long time for that to happen. So I'm kind of curious, are you starting to see younger folks gravitate to your brand based on the values of the brand?
We are. I mean, demographically, we've been historically pretty male because of our product collection started with men. Now we have a pretty decent, a decent and growing selection of women's items, thanks to Abby, by the way, coming on and really leading that and redoing it from a woman's point of view. But yeah, predominantly it's male. We skew younger though. And this message that we talk about, the thing that's really landing with younger people is the repair and like what we call lived in stuff, right? So it's either worn, returned, or repaired. That is bringing in our younger customers. They know where they can go to buy new things. But they're more interested in buying things that have stood the test of time, that don't have that impact. And so I think that the more and more we talk about that over the last really 12 to 18 months, like we're getting much more of a younger customer base in that way.
And then from a revenue standpoint, this is, I think, is an interesting thing, because the disease of more tends to come in, right? The more and more successful you are, the more and more you can kind of justify, like, wow, we could make some more stuff and continue to grow that. So like how big do you think LIVSN should be from a revenue standpoint, or and how big do you think it could be?
That's a good question. I think we should be a $50 to $100 million brand. I think we can be $1 billion brand. Right. And when you ask me that, it kind of brings up it's the S word, right? We talk about this a lot with sustainability. The S word is should, right? Like you should do this. We try to avoid that, right? Because you're talking down to people, but like, I think at 50 to 100 million, we have a brand that is at a scale that supports a really high quality of life for its employees, has the ability to be giving a meaningful impact back to its community and even nonprofit support. And can achieve a good financial outcome for myself and the other people involved with the business, right? Like that's a really good spot. Can we be $1 billion? I absolutely think so. I think this idea of own less, live more, right, which is our mantra, is really the only idea that like works as an antidote to modern life. Because everything else you're going to get is buy now, be busy, be distracted. But the outdoors always has this nice ability to be like, no, look, go outside, bring less with you. And so I think from an ethos point of view, I'd love to see us go to $1 billion on that ethos and have that become the zeitgeist of consumer culture. Now, will it happen? Don't know. But you could be $1 billion by only capturing a tiny percent of the market, right? You don't need everything. We don't want to be Nike.
That's true. I hear $1 billion, and my thought goes to like, well, that's if your average price point's $100, that's like 10 million things that you're making every year just to get to the first billion.
Colin,
right? I mean,
that's $1 billion just isn't what it used to be.
I just sort of like, does it just in the nature of producing so much to support $1 billion in revenue, does it sort of fly in the face of what the brand was founded on?
Look, that's a good question. And it's a valid piece of pushback, right? That's a rock to throw because it's valid.
We got there. We figured it out. We got there.
The Kool-Aid that we drink, that I drink, that I believe, that we believe at our heart, at our company, is that by us making more things, others make less, right? If you buy a pair of pants from us that lasts 3 times as long and then we repair it for you 3 times, I would love to get to $1 billion that way. Right. Because then that's 3 to 9 other pairs of pants or jackets or shirts or whatever that you didn't have to buy from a company that doesn't care. Right. And that's the thing you kind of mentioned a few times in your podcast about outdoors part of fashion. Right.
Yeah.
And do we have a responsibility to do it better in order to push how we make things? Right. And I think that's yes, because if someone buys LIVSN versus Patagonia, right, it's not that big impact. But if they buy a lifetime of LIVSN versus a lifetime of Shein, hell yeah, we'll get to $1 billion that way, right? And we'll have an impact. And the thing is, this is like a multiple $1 trillion industry. $1 billion's a drop in the bucket,
Right.
right? So like, it does sound like a lot, but there's so much clothing being made that if we get to $1 billion, I feel good about that.
Well, and even my pushback is very inside baseball because it's a good point. The last thing I want to ask you about is the broader fashion category, because I think often we get so kind of hung up on the outdoor of it all that it does get forgotten, and that's why I'm a bit of a broken record about it on the pod, right? Because we are part of the fashion category, a category that produces like hundreds of billions of units every single year, most of them mostly in not sustainable way. So do you think, the outdoor brands or even the outdoor industry did this have a elevated responsibility to, quote unquote, do it better, and how we push to make things and to overall make less, simply to show the rest of the fashion world that like, hey, here to lead, right? To say, hey, here's how it should be done. And we can be profitable and we can make interesting things and all that, but also we can do it in a better way than we're currently doing it, broadly speaking, in the fashion category.
Yeah, I absolutely think we should. And the reason why I think we should continue to is the same reason why we do already, is because the products that we're building are to go outside and enjoy nature. And one of the biggest environmental polluters is apparel, right? So like we have this obligation to build things that don't destroy the environment in which we play, and both moral but also business, right? You don't have a business case if you destroy our natural places. How are you going to sell your waterproof, Gore-Tex jacket if everything is polluted to hell and no one wants to go there, right? So it's not just moral; it's economic. And honestly, that's one of the biggest pieces that I think is important about like why we chose to pursue certified, B Corp certification, is because it makes you. People think that B Corp means that you don't care about profits. That's not actually what it means. It means that you weigh the profits also with your stakeholder and your mission, your stakeholders, your value chain. And I think that it's an existential crisis for companies that don't, because you're going to get to a point where the company has no right to exist because you've either destroyed the environment you work in, or you've turned off every customer, or you've exploited your way to success. And I don't think this train is stopping, recent political environment or not, right? Like we're going to keep moving towards better business over time because we don't really have much of an option. And that's why we're in Bentonville. That's why companies like Walmart have Project Gigaton and have hundreds of people on sustainability teams. It's may have started altruistically. Funny enough, Yvon Chouinard came to Walmart to start the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, which started HIG, which gives us our impact data, right? So there's a reason why these people do this, but if it's not a business case, it's not sustainable. Does that make sense? Like if it's not going to be profitable, it's not going to lead to more sales, then it's not sustainable in the economic sense, which means it's not sustainable in the environmental sense. So these things have to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And it sounds dirty to talk about profit when we talk about sustainability, but it has to be part of it. Like the business model has to work.
I think that's an outdoor industry problem. I think that is sort of like everybody kind of, they're like, there's certain things we just don't want to talk about. And I think this is one where, again, we need to stand up and lead. And I don't know if it's the OIA or if it's just the brands themselves, but kind of like, I expected you to say yes to my question, right? Like, of course we should lead in this case, but it's also, people are kind of happy living inside their own little silo and not talking about it when, we have Sophie Benson, who's an environmental journalist, come on and who focuses on the fashion industry. And she's generally looks at what we talk about mostly. Like, you guys don't really have as many problems as I see over here in the broader fashion world, right? We tend to do it better in the outdoor space on our own because of, like you said, it's protecting our wild places, and we shouldn't be harming the environment through the stuff that we make. But I just think there's more of we can have a bigger voice in it. Is kind of the frustration I have. I think there should be a bigger voice coming out of the outdoor space because of that, because we do know.
Right. And if you want to wade into a little bit of a controversial area, which is good for your podcast usually,
let's do it.
I've gotten pushback on this before when I've said it, but I don't think it's entirely untrue, is that we have a privileged position. We have a privileged customer base. We're privileged companies. We have high price point items. We have customers that buy them, right? And there's a whole nother issue right there, right? That does deserve some talking about, but because that is the reality that we're in, we have an obligation. to do these things.
Yep.
Right? The S word, right? It's hard to tell somebody who's having trouble making their next week's grocery bill for their children to buy sustainably and not buy from Shein,
You should
right?
really
If you
buy
need a
those
$12 shirt,
shirt.
yeah, then like that's not the problem though.
Yeah.
The problem is someone who makes $300,000 a year buying 300 of those shirts in a 6-month period, right? Like, and so if we are in a spot where we can command this price point, where we have these supply chains that are built on not exploiting people, then I think we should have an obligation, or we do have an obligation to do better and be a leader.
All right, man. Well, we can wrap it up there. We can definitely want to have you on again. We have other things, obviously, we can dig into. Really appreciate it. Love the story. Love, obviously, how it, your personal story has played into the development of your brand and your products. And I truly believe you guys are going to be leading the charge here. So thank you for spending some time with us and for coming on the show. And everybody go check out LIVSN.com. Go to your LIVSN dealers and buy some stuff. Let's go. It's the holidays. Buy some good stuff for the people in your family.
Appreciate it. It was a pleasure being on here. Thank you.
And that brings us to today's parting shot. And for today's parting shot, I'm going to do a retelling of the original Rock Fight, the very first episode that debuted on December 20th, 2022. And today, guys, I'm picking a fight with ski resorts, because while resort skiing is an activity that is done outdoors, it is not an outdoor activity. All right, the past 40 years have evolved to the point where most people consider activities done out of the house as outdoor. More simply, if it's outside, it's outdoor. Lines have blurred, the hardcore has softened, and for the most part, that's a good thing. But to longtime veterans of outdoor sports, spotting something that we consider outdoor is a lot like spotting porn. We know it when we see it. There are new activities like swim running that may try to prove their outdoor worth, but our bullshit detectors are finely tuned. We know what is and isn't outdoor. And while it may seem sacrilegious to disparage the sport that no doubt led many of you listening to this to become outdoorsy yourselves, guys, resort skiing is just the worst. Strapping sticks to one's feet to traverse the snow is as ancient as it is special. It's been around for centuries in various forms, serving as a mode of transportation before becoming the neutered version of the activity that you find today on hills around the world. If you've ever gone backcountry skiing, you've spiritually gotten in touch with your ski-bound ancestors, and you know the absolute wonder that skiing or splitboarding can provide. Climbing uphill to explore snow-filled forests, earning turns on empty terrain, and searching for stashes of powder is one of the great joys one can discover in the backcountry. But most people who ski or snowboard will never know this. For them, the only experience they'll ever have will be a curated affair at a fucking resort. And that's the root of my beef, because resort skiing is now seen as any other outdoor activity. YouTube is littered with homemade videos of people hooting and hollering on ski lifts and incredibly well-made shorts, deifying ski resorts as the bastion of a life in the mountains. And before I go any further, let me tell you, I love skiing at a resort and believe that it has a place in our outdoorsy lifestyle. I got to spend 4 years living in a ski town, and those were, hands down, the best 4 winters of my life. You catch the right place on the right day, and it is impossible not to have fun. But there are several reasons why ski resorts are without question not part of the spectrum of outdoor adventure sports. Firstly, lift lines. More times than not, skiing at a resort involves the single most horrible thing anyone ever has to do, and something that never should happen when pursuing fun, and that's waiting in line. The only time waiting in line should be part of a day outdoors is waiting for a beer when the bar is a little crowded after you just got done proving your worth on the trail. And second, and I'm inspired by one of the great characters in the history of cinema, Randall Graves, when he astutely said to his coworker, Dante Hicks, "This job would be great if it wasn't for all the fucking customers." After you've wasted your time with all of those people in the lift line, you now have to deal with them on the actual ski runs. And unless you know the mountain inside out, meaning you're a local with a season pass, you better have your head on a swivel, because that helmet you're wearing is there to protect you from other skiers more than anything Mother Nature can throw at you. Lastly, and most egregiously, you gotta pay through your nose to go. Beyond acquiring the tools of the trade, I resent any activity that costs money, and in this regard, resort skiing is no different or better than slapping on some khakis and dedicating yourself to the game of golf. If I drop $900 on a surfboard or $3,500 on a mountain bike, or hell, even $120 on a pair of trail runners, I've paid my entrance fee, and the waves and miles are all free. Resort skiing is the most successful attempt at monetizing the outdoors we've ever seen, and most of our community is down to support it? There is a significant population of outdoorsy-minded individuals who still view mountain biking in wilderness areas as a deal breaker. But we're all okay with cutting down chunks of forest and setting up ski lifts that run off climate change, accelerating fossil fuels. That's okay. Guys, resort skiing just isn't outdoor. Backcountry skiing is outdoor. Kayaking is outdoor. Mountain biking? Outdoor. Surfing? Outdoor. Hiking, backpacking, trail running? All outdoor. Those activities encourage you to acquire gear and skill and go deep into the backcountry using different modes of transportation to see the best of what nature has to offer. Resort skiing is an amusement park ride masquerading as an outdoor sport. And rides at theme parks, they're a ton of fun, but they're also a distraction. You don't really learn anything from going on them. Resort skiing is a fun, expensive day outside. On the best days, you get to run laps of deep powder, hopefully with good friends, eat high-calorie food on the mountain, and drink high-calorie beer when the lifts close. That's a damn good time. But it is not outdoor. And I'll throw rocks at anyone who disagrees with me. All right, that's the show for today. Please send all of your feedback on this and every episode of The Rock Fight to myrockfight@gmail.com. The Rock Fight is a production of Rockfight LLC. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And once again, he's here, Krista Makes. He's here to sing you a song. And that song, well, it's the Rock Fight Fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock fight.